All right, we're back, second hour, talking with JB Campbell. And we were just getting around to talking about the radiation, the whole Fukushima, what happened in Japan, and probably Chernobyl too. I don't know, I don't have as much information on that as I do Fukushima. This was created by the Israelis. They set atomic weapons off to cause the tsunami. They destroyed the power plants, you know. Same way they tried to destroy Nagasaki and Hiroshima with their atomic weapons. These were created by Jews, and I'm pretty sure that the production of these atomic weapons, thousands of atomic weapons that have no use on Earth other than to destroy civilizations. And who controls that? Who makes the money out of that? Is that a Jewish conspiracy? I believe it is. I believe it is. I can't imagine a practicing Christian, wanting to go into work for a company to build atomic weapons to slaughter millions of people. But then again, I also believe that the whole term Judeo-Christianity, Judeo-Christian, you might as well say, I'm a satanic Christian, thank you. And we know that the Talmud talks about Jesus being the son of a whore and burning in boiling excrement, boiling semen in hell. And let's see, what does the Bible say? An antichrist is somebody that doesn't believe in Jesus. That would describe pretty much all of the Jews. So how is it we've got Jews producing atomic weapons? We've got Jews and even Benjamin Friedman, a Jewish historian, in the first issue of the Free American, which is available online. You can read the first 11 issues of the Free American online, freeamerican.com now. Even Benjamin Friedman called them so-called Jews. The Jews who say they're Jews but are not, are of the synagogue of Satan. They've taken over the Christian church, and even George Washington was warned by the British general that the Jews would take over the Christianity, and in 200 years would be working for the British Empire. I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether Israel's controlling Britain or Britain's controlling Israel or vice versa with America. I can't tell you if the United States took over the mafia or if the mafia took over the government, but it's six of one and half a dozen of another.
Well, you hit on an important part, I think, is the religion part of it. That's how America, that's how Europe has been controlled for Jews through religion, through Christianity. I mean, there's just no getting around it. And I think the Old Testament is the most vicious, vile, and fantastic nonsense that I could even imagine that back in the 90s or late 80s, a guy read in the book that I started the militia with, The New American Man. So he was started Salinas, California. He told me, "Oh, I got a book for you." So I went over to the truck stop and got in the truck with him and pulled up a massive book. I said, "I'm not. What's in the Bible?" "Oh, geez. No. I know how you feel about that, but I want this. This is the Farrar Fenton Bible in modern English, written around the turn of the century, 1900, or finished about then. Farrar Fenton was an Englishman who could think in Greek, Hebrew, and Chaldean, so that he could translate the Bible into understandable English. The King James version is just, to me, I wouldn't even try it. It's just so convoluted and crazy, that old stilted English. But this one is in modern English. And so I said, "Well, okay, thank you very much." And I went home and I started to read it. And I thought, God, the guy comes all the way from Missouri to give me this stupid thing. I'm going to read it. And I did. And I got quite an education. I had no idea how sick and vicious, like Leviticus and Deuteronomy, the whole Old Testament is just a swamp of filth and perversion and murder and slavery, and all okayed by Yahweh, by the ever-living, by whatever you want to call this monster in the sky that these guys have dreamed up. And that's the basis for the New Testament, because Jesus is always harking back to the Old Testament and referring to things back in then. So I thought, oh my God, the hatred of women. You cannot believe the vicious attitudes towards women. How could a woman be a Christian? The whole thing is just sick. The whole thing is Jewish as hell. All the disciples were Jews. Saul of Tarsus, he was a Jew. He was a member of the Sanhedrin, a Roman citizen. He wiped out as many of Jesus' early followers as he could get his hands on.
Be a good slave. Don't rebel against your masters. That's the Pauline Christianity. And, of course, that turned Tex Mars against me when I exposed the whole Pauline Christianity and the fact that Paul, the Apostle Paul, wasn't named Paul at all. He was Saul. He was a Sanhedrin, as you said.
Yeah, so this is a crazy, to me, Christianity is Judaism for Gentiles. It's a cancer of the intellect. It totally negates your thinking. You cannot think straight if you have this system of faith. And you're pretty much forbidden to resist. That's not Christian. How could a religion have as its symbol the instrument of the torture and murder of the main character?
Exactly. Exactly. This is what I pointed out to people. How can this whole Catholic Church, which is was responsible for the genocide of the American Indians, and this we adopted an instrument of torture used to kill our so-called savior. I've also brought it up, and of course this upsets my Christian friends. I wrote a book 45 years ago about the destruction of Atlantis by what Volossky called a conjunction, when Mars and Venus planets got a little bit out of whack and came too close together, created the flood, or created the destruction, created the pole shift, and pretty much wiped out the planet. I said there were a number of ships built. You call them UFOs. The Indian text called them Brahmanas. And in my fiction book, this was just fiction. I was just writing science fiction. That there was some ships. One of them was called the Olympus. One of them was called the Valkyrie. One of them was called the Ra. One of them was called Heaven. And the captain of the Earth ship Heaven, Yahweh, went insane, blamed the people on the planet for the destruction, and went about to enslave them. He was opposed by his co-captain, or his first mate on the Earth ship Heaven. His name was Lucifer. Now, don't say that the Masonic Lodge and the Masons are the good guys here, but if they were opposing the Catholic Church and the enslavement of so-called Christians, maybe Lucifer wasn't a bad guy. Maybe he was demonized by the Christians because they needed a scapegoat to hide the fact that their God, Yahweh, was a bloodthirsty son of a bitch. Now, I don't know, my whole life, I mean, I'm the grandson of a Methodist minister. Certainly nothing wrong with my grandfather or my grandmother My grandmother had a victory garden out in the backyard. Best meals I ever had were them. Was with them. Didn't get to see them much, but I never felt comfortable in a church. And my friend, who is a pastor, he calls the Bible his answer book. We don't exactly agree on everything, but he's a good man. He's a good man. And he points out that most of your churches have got Masonic cornerstones. So again, who is the bad guy here? Lucifer and Yahweh? Yahweh sounded a little bit more bloodthirsty than Lucifer. And why would a God, a loving God, ask somebody to tell somebody to kill their son and sacrifice their son to prove their loyalty to him? Why would a good, a loving God not want Adam and Eve to know the difference between good and evil? Unless that's to protect him. And I've even had, I've got one guest that I've had on my show several times. She's got a few strikes against her because she is A, an attorney, B, she worked for the World Bank, and she didn't want to talk to me because I wrote a science fiction book about Lucifer being a good guy.
Yeah. Well, how do you beat a God that's so hated what he had created, supposedly, that he wiped out all life on earth except for old Noah and his zoo? I mean, how do you love a God like that? Or where's the love? I'm not feeling the love on that deal.
Well, I've had pretty much. I've got a gentleman, an archaeologist, that basically documented and backed up the science fiction book that I wrote 45 years ago. He said there was a civilization, a worldwide civilization. It built structures and cities out of stone, out of concrete, out of something that we can't build today. We can't build it today. And this worldwide civilization was wiped out. The civilizations that sprung up around it were like Egypt, the signs in the Middle East and Mesopotamia. These civilizations sprung up with some of the technology salvaged from the worldwide civilizations of Atlantis. And Atlantis had atomic weapons. They had flying saucers. The Indians called them Vimanas. And somebody on the chat room just asked me, what religion am I? I would have to say I'm a pantheist. Look that one up, guys.
I'm a heathen. You look up heathen, it just means somebody who rejects the God of the Bible.
Well, to me, the God is the force that holds the atoms together, that created our DNA. I think that's intelligent design. We may have been modified. They may have had the technology to modify our DNA thousands of years ago to keep us as a good slave, to keep us from rebelling against our masters.
I think you're right.
I mean, we've certainly got, we only use a certain portion of our brains. I believe telepathy. I have experienced telepathy. I have experienced astral projection. I have been outside this body. We aren't all exactly the same thing. And if you've got an omniscient and omnipotent God, you know everything and you can do everything, and you're the only one of your kind, which I'm not exactly sure either. You'd have to be bored to tears, wouldn't you? So what do? You form us and you give us free will, you give us amnesia, so we don't know how powerful we are, how powerful we could be, how powerful we were. And as Shakespeare said, the whole world becomes a stage, and God sits behind your eyes. Our Creator sits behind our eyes and says, "Well, I wonder how JB and Clay are going to get along today. I wonder how, we provide his romance, we provide his intrigue, we provide his excitement." Now, that's not the religious, that's not what the church wants you, but the church didn't even want you to read the Bible. Catholic Church didn't want you to read the Bible. We'll translate it for you. We'll tell you what you're supposed to think. So I don't know. Maybe we need a whole new religion. Maybe we need a whole new. Maybe I've got the right take on this religion because it doesn't matter what color you are, and the Constitution does give you the right to worship any way you want. So you want to hug a tree? Go ahead. Maybe you can borrow my tweezers, pull the splinters out. You want to bang your head against that wall, knock yourself out. I'll watch. I ain't gonna do it with you.
This Christianity is so twisted. You know, the main character, Jesus, is sent down here to be brutally tortured and slaughtered in the most terrible way you can really imagine. This guy Saul of Tarsus has been an assassin. He's been killing the paupers, what they call the Ebionim, or the early believers, the followers of Jesus. He's been killing them as any way he can. He gets elevated to sainthood. The main character gets slaughtered. What the hell is that? It's upside down. It's like I say, it's the cancer of the intellect, and it destroys all thought processes. All you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to resist evil. I mean, Jesus had, as you say, he was omniscient, omnipotent. Supposedly he could perform miracles. But in the Garden of Gethsemane, he surrenders. What the hell? Why? I mean, there's no program for victory in Christianity. Jesus doesn't have a program for victory. All you can do is surrender and beg for forgiveness.
Turn the other cheek. Turn the other cheek. My ass. Ain't going to do it. Ain't going to do it. And this ain't does that make me a rebel? Does that make me anti-government? I don't really give a shit.
So it's truly a disaster, and it's not controlled mentally. I mean, how many Americans are Christians, and how many are in favor of Israel because of their Christianity? That's our problem here, really. I mean, I don't have any. Jews have tried to kill me, but the Christians make it okay. They make it acceptable. It's like liberals make communism possible. Well, the Christians make Judaism possible. Christianity has protected the Jews, which may be the whole purpose of Christianity, is to protect the Jews. The Jews pretend that they hate Christians. Well, they do hate them, but they secretly know that without Christians, they'd all been wiped out centuries ago. It's their best protection. You just got to wake up, get tough.
Now, just for your information, folks, according to Wikipedia, which maybe as accurate as anything here, pantheism is the belief that the universe or nature, as the totality of everything, is identical with divinity, or that everything composes an all-encompassing immanent God. Pantheists thus do not believe in a distinct personal or anthropomorphic God. And I've told you that, folks. I don't think God looks anything like Charlton Heston. It's control. Judaism and the whole Muslim religion, I mean, that's all about control. Why would you want to bow and stick your nose in the dirt if you're an individual. You're gonna, this is control. It's I don't think being a Muslim means that you're evil. You know, that's more of a better description of Judaism.
That's right.
But still, it's about control. And if they, but the same thing's been done to the Christians. We got to go fight those gooks. We got to go fight those. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The Russians never been our enemy. Ever. Never been our enemy. The Tsar wasn't our enemy, and they murdered him. Same time they gave us the Federal Reserve. Again, part of control. The church wasn't keeping the control over us. So they gave us banking, central banking.
The Tsar, speaking of that, the Russians back in those days had debt-free currency too. All of these countries we've been invading and attacking recently are outside of the Rothschild banking system.
That's right. Venezuela, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Iran. Of course Iran. How many countries has Iran invaded over the last 100 years?
In the past several hundred years, zero.
That's right.
That guy that played Jesus in Mel Gibson's movie about Jesus, can't remember the actor's name. He's totally destroyed. Mel Gibson said, "You're never going to work again," and he never did. They won't let him work in Hollywood now just because he played Jesus in that movie. I mean, it's a mind scrambler. They use this Christian thing to protect themselves. At the same time, they spit on Christians if they come to the Holy Land, so-called. They spit on them. And the Christians that go over there, they don't even know how to deal with this. They don't get it. When they feel it on their faces.
How do we deal with this? I mean, I have tried to find answers, and the best answer I could find was based on Richard Kelly Hoskins' statement that the foundation of every civilization was a self-sufficient family farm. If we go back to our neighborhoods and we go back to growing our own food and producing our own energy from everything God gave us, the wind, the sun. We don't need the bankers. We don't need the Jews. We don't need the money lenders for nothing. We can feed if we can feed ourselves and turn the light bulb on or turn the computer on from the sun. Like my watch here, I got a watch here. It's solar powered. I never have to wind it, and it doesn't cost nearly as much as a Rolex.
Can you imagine paying $6,000 for a wristwatch?
I got mine. I had one for 20 years, but I didn't pay $6,000 for it. But no, I can't.
Well, I think to answer your question, I mean, I've thought a lot about this over the decades. What's required is a love of heroism and fighting evil. I got infected with this as a little kid in the 50s when the Davy Crockett thing came on Walt Disney in December of 1954. It's something about that show really struck a nerve, and I guess it set me on a course for the rest of my life. But it's the opposite of Christianity. It's this willingness to fight evil. I'm not saying Crockett was in real life a great guy. He was in favor of the banks when he was a congressman, and Andrew Jackson took the money away from the Bank of the United States, the second bank in the United States, and he bankrupted it. And Crockett was the defender of the bank, unfortunately. But Crockett redeemed himself at the Alamo, obviously, for all his sins in Congress. He stuck up for the Indians, and it was against what Jackson was doing to the Indians, running them out of Tennessee and sending them to Oklahoma, or the Indian Territory. So he was kind of a mixed guy, and I like what he did at the Alamo and all those guys. I had an uncle, John Reynolds from Pennsylvania, was there too. So it means a lot to me, and I was guided on my life course by that crazy television show. It's amazing how things happen, but I could never go to church. I could never identify with these strange alien characters from the Middle East in the stories that we were told in Sunday school. I finally sat there with my friend John Carpenter watching this movie with these nails being pounded into a guy's hands and feet. But holy God Almighty, I can't deal with this. This is insane. And I never went back. I just think that we have to teach the love of heroism and the struggle between good and evil. Always. That's just got to be our guiding light. And forget Christianity. It is the enemy. It's how we're controlled. Christianity, all religion, is mind control. And it serves the government. If it didn't, it would be wiped out. Church always supports the government. That's how it gets its tax exemption. So we just have to reject this wimpy, pacifistic poison that's been pumped into our brains since childhood.
Well, even the churches are guilty of this. Wow, you're not a Baptist. You're a Methodist. You believe in dancing. We can't condone that. You're not. You got to be a good Baptist. You can't dance. You got to be a good Christian. You got to be a good Jew. You got to be a good Muslim. Divide and conquer is what's happening here, and this is probably the hardest thing for us to overcome. You know, Clay supports smoking marijuana. He thinks marijuana ought to be legal. You're damn right I do. I think all drugs are to be legal. I don't think the government should be able to, or a man with a badge should be able to arrest you for anything you got in your pocket. If you hurt somebody else, that's a different thing. If you're stealing from somebody, yeah, you need to pay for that. You need to be tried, and if you're a murderer and it ain't self-defense, then you ought to be hung immediately. I don't think we ought to keep anybody in jail for 20 years. It's and as far as drugs are concerned, since I know, and it's documented in my book, Mystery Babylon, I know that the governments, the CIA, government employees, the BATF, the BATF was supplying the drug gangs with weapons. The drug gangs are run by the CIA. If you ain't working for the CIA, they, like the Median cartel, they just kill you, and they install the Cali cartel. Our presidents were running these drug gangs, formed them. Operation Watchtower by George Bush, he was covering for the Mossad. He was covering for Mike Harari. Everything we've talked about in this show. This is all government inspired and banker inspired, and the Rothschilds and the Jews control Hollywood and the banks. They control, and these corporations that have sprung up around them, Monsanto, Pfizer, everything that they've done has been for our detriment. Tear down that wall between us and Mexico. Replace it with tables. Let the Mexicans, let the Peruvians, let the Colombians bring all their drugs up here, lay them on the table, pay a duty on it, and let Americans buy what they want, take it home with them, and do what they want with their own bodies. We don't need to be paying $50,000 a year to house criminals. Why would we do that? Set them free. Let people buy what they want, do what they want with their own bodies. My religion is individualism. Now, I've smoked a lot of pot over the years, and I'm not sick. I don't need any. I was too healthy to get medical marijuana, which is a scam in itself. God gave you that plant. Grow it, grow it in your backyard, smoke it if you want to. Why would if a man with a badge can come up and go, what's that? Is that marijuana I smell? You live in a police state. I wrote books about this 45 years ago, JB. And you know, I've even been attacked, and they tried to destroy some of the books that I wrote because he supports drugs. No, I don't support drugs. I support freedom. I support the right to choose. And
I agree with you.
You know, it's not that I'm against Jews. I don't care who your grandmother slept with. You know, but Zionism is the ultimate parasitic philosophy. Now, Zionism may be really, really evil, but that doesn't seem evil to those practicing it. That is what you must learn, that these Zionist bubble don't see themselves as predators. They see themselves as the chosen one, directing mankind towards God's glory. Chasing people toward the Godhead is turning out to be the greatest evil of all time. If the soul is eternal, you don't have to do this because the soul will eventually get there and it's a good time. So leave other people alone when it comes to religion. They will all evolve and get back to God without your help or terrorizing them into your submission. It's not your job to help God. The all-powerful God doesn't need your help. But you think he does because that damn preacher taught you that lie because he needs help spreading his particular power base. Being chosen. Now I had just gotten out of prison, doing time for having marijuana in Texas. My sister said, son, I want you to meet my preacher. Oh, you've known me your whole life, you know. I'll meet him. No, probably not a good idea, but I'll meet him. And the first thing he said to me is, well, son, have you been saved? I said, I don't know, preacher. What does that mean? Let me give you a little add-on here. Being chosen or saved is a very evil thing when you take it to heart and start expressing it on others. It's one thing to believe that God chose you over all others, or that God is going to pick you for heaven come Judgment Day. That's just an exclusionary running around your mind. But what happens when you start to act on it as an inner impulse? The preacher told me, he said, well, you've accepted Jesus as your Lord and Master. And I said, well, I haven't accepted anybody as my Lord and Master. And, you know, nobody showed me, Jesus hadn't showed me his ID, so no, I haven't done that. Well, let me ask you a question, preacher. There's an Aborigine that lives in Australia that never seen a white man, never read a Bible, never heard of Jesus. He takes a mate. He has 2 children. He teaches them how to survive. He teaches them how to find water. He teaches them how to live, how to grow food, how to find food. He dies. Does he go to hell because he hasn't accepted Jesus as his Lord and Master? And the preacher said, well, yes. So I reached out, took him by his tie, took him to the front door, and threw him out the front door. My sister came back in a little later and said, what happened to the preacher? I said, oh, he had to leave. But that's my experience with Christianity. That's insanity. That's nothing more than insanity.
I agree completely.
And how do you know? I mean, you're giving your life to somebody you never seen, somebody you never sat down with, somebody didn't show you any ID, and How do you know that's not the devil? How do you know that Yahweh isn't the real name of the devil and that Lucifer was just a good guy trying to set you free? How do you know that?
Well, when you worship an invisible God, that's one definition of insanity right there. What the hell?
Yeah, hell is what happens when your religious belief become political. Hell is what happened when the Spanish anchored their boat at some Caribbean island and started converting the brown savages to Christ. Hell is what happens when you step off the boat and start following the inner God voice in your head. The Bible is the first book that reached the New World. It was on the first landing craft when the first monk of the first craft hit the shore. That book was held out from the Spanish conquistadors and the conquest that followed. Hell followed that book wherever it went. That ought to tell you something about that book and how it is used by political authority under the guise of religious salvation. The natives were doomed and didn't know it. They should have boiled all their new friends alive, but they didn't, and thus were doomed. Many of them died. The lucky ones died. Many were tortured and dismembered alive. The state of Israel, folks, is the home port of modern conquistadors. They are the new predators stalking the world, and whether you are a Palestinian or an Armenian or American matters not, they view you in exactly the same way. They are disregarding everything you hold dear, destroying every civilized value you may associate with, and are letting loose on the world Old Testament styled wrath. The evil of Zionism is the world's greatest problem. It's the source of false flags and misery. It is the inner rabbinic mind set loose on civilization. All one has to do is study in what's happening to all country in proximity of Israel. Hell has come to Libya, Syria, Egypt, West Bank, Gaza, to the Palestinian farmers, Olive Grove, and there's no end game to this Jewish created hell. They'll keep on destroying and razing and defaming without end until the world organizes to stop it. Since the Jews control most of the world's political apparatus and the media, that will be near impossible and will allow them to bring down the whole world and force it under the demonic Talmudic simulacrum. It's the Jews. It always has been the Jews. This is what you must comprehend, folks. Zionism is the political expression of the Old Testament let loose on mankind. Getting rid of Israel won't solve the problem. Getting rid of every Jew on the problem still wouldn't fix the problem. You got to get rid of the book, too. The book is the instruction manual on how to conquer and pillage, and anyone can apply the chosen status to themselves. I mean, even take a look at Christian identity movement. White Europeans claiming to be true Jews. The insanity will never end until we get rid of this book. Now, this is not my thoughts exactly. I think the book, I don't believe in destroying books, but I believe that you can read and understand and take out the good of it. There's a lot of good in the Bible. And this is the trick we've really got to conquer here is how do you fight evil without becoming evil? Now,
well, in self-defense, anything goes. If you're trying to kill you, then watch out. Anything goes.
I've got this linked on the under your show here to this particular article about the sleeping giant. They say the world must end Zionism or Israel will end the world. In order to destroy Zionism, then the world must overcome the Judeo-Christian myth that drives Zionism, supremacy in the name of religion and God. The Bible is how you get political power. Even Hollywood gets it. Go watch the Book of Eli.
Who wrote that stuff you've been reading?
Let me see here.
Some good stuff.
Yeah, it is. And it's linked under our site. The Sleeping Giant Awakens. There's somebody called Yukon Jack. I don't know who he is, but I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah.
It's up on the Rebel. It's Yukon Jack is listed right under John Kaminsky, and pretty sure it's you're here too.
Yeah, he's a good writer, good thinker.
He ends this up. He ends this up saying America has been gang raped by the neocon Jews. America has been hacked into pieces by dual citizen Israelis. America needs to wake the hell up, jump to her feet, extend her fist, and get right in Netanyahu's face and tell him to fuck off. I agree.
They understand that language. Yeah, they understand that.
Yep. And Kaminsky said just what I've been thinking. Israel needs to be destroyed, and Judaism needs to be erased from the memory of man.
Talking my language.
Well, it's linked under your show, and I've got a lot of this and the whole thing about the articles. It's up on Free American. The books are, and by the way, the magazines, I'm giving them away free right now. I'm suggesting that you can take any of the first 11 issues. I'm working right now on April issue, and I'll have a lot more information in that. You have to pay for the 12th and 13th issues. You have to pay for that. But I'm giving you the first 11 free and suggesting you share them with all your friends. What we've talked about on the show today will be in the 13th issue. And we've got links to your site, JB Campbell ExtremismOnline.com, the rebel.org, JB Campbell, JB-Campbell. Mm-hmm. And we've got the links to this whole Final Solutions. Got links to that too. Doing nothing is not an option, folks. This is why I do the show every day. Nobody pays me to get up this early in the morning and do the show. I'm depending on your donations to get me through, to help pay for my transportation, to help me keep speaking and telling you the truth. You know, if there's a choice here of being Muslim, Christian, or Jewish, I'd rather be Christian. I'd rather live in a so-called Christian society, even though I know what they're doing. What we've got to do here, what's important here, I was just talking with a gentleman. I'm supposed to be on his show. He goes under Smith Fix, lives here in Texas, and he was going to expose Ron Paul. Now, I know Ron Paul. I've met him. I've spoken with him at some of the conventions, and I think he's a good guy. I think he, more than any congressman in that we've got up there, he's tried to tell you the truth. Is he telling you the whole truth? He's not speaking out against the Jews. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. But if we attack him, we lose a base of operations. I want to reach out to more people. I think we've got 50 million criminals here. As Ayn Rand said, the government has no control over honest citizens, so they've got to make criminals out of us. This is what the drug laws are about. This is what the tax laws are about. This is what the hate crimes are about. To make you into a criminal. Oh, then now you can't vote. Whoa, now you can't own guns. Whoa, now you're going to be demonized. Now you're not going to be able to get a job. This is part of the control. Somehow we have to overcome that. We have to work together. You may be afraid of bikers because you grew up watching the Hell's Angels on version on television on the movies. You know that ain't the way it is. That ain't the way it is actually. Bikers are the most freedom-loving people, and it was bikers, not the Patriot movement, not the Christians that showed up almost 1 million strong in Washington. The only mistake they left was leaving without taking some of the politicians and the president with them. And I don't want to alienate Christian identity people. You're close. At least you've come to the realization that Israel isn't what they want you to believe they are. It isn't that. The Jews aren't the chosen ones, but you're not either. We're human. And we can become more than human. We can get better. We can be better humans. But that doesn't make us better than our neighbors. We've got to somehow figure out this and work together to become more productive, to become more self-sufficient. And really the answers are here. They control you by your gasoline. Well, I'm not a slave. I'm not a slave. I can get in my pickup truck and go get a beer. Watch. No, it's called economic slavery. You're paying for that gas. The gas, your taxes on that gas are going to maintain the criminal government that's putting your children, your friends, your parents in prisons. And this last issue of the Free American, I talk about the whole private prison industry. Prisons turned into corporate profit centers. They can get you to work for 25 cents an hour. They're doing to you what we accuse the Chinese of doing. The Chinese are probably more free than you are right now, and the Russians definitely are. Oh, the Russians are coming. Well, today it's the Chinese are coming. The Chinese are coming. Watch this movie. Watch this movie. This is going to be the Chinese. This is going to be the North Koreans. This is going to be. It's all propaganda, folks. And you can get back to it. You could organize your neighborhood, grow your own food, grow food in your backyards instead of grass. Put solar on your roofs, and get a paycheck from the power companies as long as you stay hooked up to them. And if the lines go down, you don't. You don't. We've got the answer. Right now, you could build an electric vehicle, and there's one company I believe that's making wheels that you can bolt right onto your electric vehicle that'll charge your batteries. I've been wondering why they didn't do that for years. Why don't you just you got a alternator on there. It's hooked up to a belt, and as your motor turns, it charges your battery. Well, why not put that same alternator on your wheels? We don't have to buy that gasoline. And you want to make the gasoline? You can run some plastic tubing around your property, grow algae, and convert that algae, which grows a lot faster than corn, into fuel. Willie Nelson tried to do that, biodiesel. They can make it. It's called sun gas, I think now is what they're talking about using. We really got answers here, JB, but they don't want us to do. They don't want us to work together. They don't want us to be self-sufficient. They want you to be dependent. They want you to be a good slave, and they don't want you rebelling against your masters. How we can overcome that mindset? That's a defeatist mindset. Don't rebel against your masters. Just turn the other cheek. Be a good Christian. Be a good slave. Don't rebel against your master. That's Pauline Christianity right there.
That's how we're controlled, I would say. You bring up the Russians. buddy of mine, a Russian, and I used to write screenplays. He said, "How about one more about the USS Liberty?" Oh man, I said, "I don't know about this." Okay, so he kept at me, and I said, "Okay, I'll try that." So I investigated it. He said, "Hey, could you possibly say a good word about the Russians in that deal?" Well, I said, "I don't know. I mean, let me look into it." So I discovered Operation Cyanide, U.S. Army or U.S. Navy, I guess, operation code name, Cyanide, and I called the screenplay Cyanide. You can see it on my website, jbcampbellextremismonline.com. Pretty good screenplay. But out of all this conspiracy between the U.S. government and Israel, the U.S. government sent that ship into Gaza or Sinai to be sunk by the Israelis and then blamed on Egypt. And cyanide included the nuking of Cairo and Alexandria. And it was unbelievable, but it was a real deal. The book was written by a BBC reporter named Peter Hounham. Anyway, I discovered that in fact the Soviet Navy was following the Liberty, and after the attack by Israel, there was a U.S. submarine watching the whole thing, filming it, and then they were kind of the backup. If the plot failed, then the submarine would sink the Liberty. I think it was called the Amberjack. But the Liberty managed to limp away from the kill zone, unbelievably. It was a miracle, a real miracle. And it started heading towards the island of Malta, about 7 days away. And nobody thought it was going to make it because the ship had a 40-foot hole in the side of it from a torpedo. But somehow, miraculously, it made its way along with no steering. And the guys were down below with a huge monkey wrench manipulating the rudder to try to guide it towards Malta. The submarine was following it. They were Walt Rostow and Lyndon Johnson. They were discussing sinking the ship anyway en route to Malta. But the Soviet destroyer, they got in the way. They followed the Liberty, got between it and the submarine, because the Soviets realized, especially these guys on this destroyer, they realized that they were going to be blamed for this thing too, because they were the sponsors of the Egyptians. The whole idea was war against the Soviet Union by these crazy Jews under Lyndon Johnson. They wanted war, just like they want war now in Ukraine against Russia. We're up against the same Jewish poison and cancer. They want nuclear war, and they wanted it back then. And that's what we're up against. And by God, the Soviets, our deadly enemies, were the saviors of the Liberty and probably prevented nuclear war back in 1967. So you're right. The Russians have really never been our enemies. Our enemies in Washington, D.C., in New York. That's where the enemy is.
Yes, it is. And folks, that's why they don't want you supporting me. That's why they don't want JB Campbell to get a job. That's why they have taken away all of my advertising money that I had for years in the Free American. As long as I talked about the U.S. government, I didn't have any problems. When I started exposing the Jewish connection, suddenly I had no more advertisers. They would call up my advertisers and threaten them. They're doing the same thing to your potential employees. Now, is the FBI doing that? Or is it the Mossad? Is there a difference? Why is Homeland Security arming our IRS agents, arming their IRS agents, arming the Forest Service? Why are they trying to drive us, the American people, out of the wilderness areas and into the cities? It's because the cities are your ghettos, 21st century ghettos. And if you don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling when you see a cop in your rear view mirror, you're probably living in a police state and just now becoming aware of it. And if there's any way that I can, any way that we can work together, folks, I've got plenty of information. I can tell you how to do things. I don't build magnetic generators, but I got the instructions for it here. I don't build electric vehicles. I don't work on Harleys, but I ride one. And, I'm not telling you to go out and kill anybody, but I'm telling you that you need to, in order to defend yourself, you've got to, you got to take steps now to secure your location, your home, your town, your community, your neighborhood. And JB, that's what you've done in your area, isn't it?
Yes, we have. We have.
Tell people about that.
Well, we've started this thing, the American Defense Party, and locally we look at it just as importantly as nationally, because you can get busted by these vicious, sadistic cops at any time. So we have what we call neighborhood watch, with a difference. We've got an oath that we take amongst ourselves to defend each other in the event of a home invasion by cops or feds or whoever, criminals, but there's no criminals around here. The only criminals are the feds and the federalists. So radios, radios, we're on the same frequency, and we will come to each other's aid as fast as we can get there once we get word. So that's not around here. But that's what you're going to do. And there's no way to protect yourself against taxpayers, heritage with guns. They're a dangerous gang. We're ready to deal with them with the drop of a hat.
All right, JB Campbell's been my guest today. The links to his sites are up there. The links to the stories that I've shared with you are up there. And you can go to freeamerican.com, click on any of the donate buttons, takes you right over to PayPal. You can make a donation with a credit card. You can go to freeamerican.com and download the magazines. And remember, my magazine, for 10 years, my magazine sold in Books and Million, Barnes and Noble, for $5. You can get that now for $2.99. Get any of them for $2.99. And the first 11 issues are yours free. I urge you to pull them down, save them, download them as an MP3, and share them with your friends. Let people know. The Free American is one of the few sites, and of course Rebel, the Australian site that JB writes for, and Yukon Jack writes for, and John Kaminsky writes for. These are the sites that are giving you the truth. Free Americans right up there with it. I update it every day. Every day there's something different on it. There's something new on it. And we've got links. All you got to do is click on JB's name. That'll take you to this show. JB, we're out of time. God bless you. Hope you get work.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate all the good work.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Yeah.